Well, hello, everybody. Sorry, we're a little bit late today, but I have a whole bunch of guests with me on today's Built by BIPOC Q&A Tuesday. I'm super excited. And so, just kind of some background here. In my work at Conscious Exchange, I work primarily with people of color, and a lot of immigrants and children of immigrants. Um, and I think I probably attract a lot of immigrants and children of immigrants because I myself am a child of immigrants. And so one thing that it's been interesting to talk about is the immigrant mindset, right? And how that really impacts our business, and how we maybe start or decide to move forward with our business, right? And I think some of the great things that I've picked up as a daughter of immigrants is this immigrant work ethic, working really hard, and I think that is a great quality. And at the same time, I think sometimes this putting your head down, work hard, can also be something that's more challenging and can hold us back. So I'm really excited to have some of my friends, my clients, join me today to talk about what being with the experience of being an immigrant, being children of immigrants is like, and again how that plays a part in how we build our businesses from the ground up, and how we move forward, the clients we work with, and just to get some wisdom out of this group because and I know a lot of you too are also serving a lot of other people of color or also immigrants or children of immigrants. So super excited to have everyone here today. Just as an intro, for those of you who are new to me, my name is Carissa Begonia. I'm a business coach for BIPOC entrepreneurs, a LinkedIn expert, and top voice. I'm a second generation Filipino American daughter of immigrants and the first and only in my family to start my own business. I believe that entrepreneurship is the path to equity and life design is liberation. And at Conscious Exchange, we're creating an ecosystem of BIPOC entrepreneurs with the same mission to achieve time, location, financial, and occupational freedom, not just for themselves, but for their families and for their communities. So thank you all again for joining Built by BIPOC on this Q&A Tuesday, where my business besties and I will share some practical as well as mindset tips around common questions that were commonly asked when it comes to running a business. So also, if you would like to share any thoughts, say hi to us, share some love. If you have a question, please just let us know in the comments and we'll try to answer them as best as we can. Also, then, speaking of my business besties, here we are. I brought some of them with me here today. I'd love for everyone to meet my clients and friends, Gabby Cereza, Ashmi Patel, and Lisa Ramadar. So hi, everybody.
Hello.
This is a new kind of experiment for me a little bit too, in that I've never had this many guests on my live stream. So this is fun. We'll see how this all goes. But yeah, I would love for each of you, just to share more about yourselves. The work you do, your mission, your movement, and maybe a fun fact about you that people wouldn't know from just looking at your LinkedIn profile. Who wants to go first?
I can go. Hi, my name is Lisa Ramadar. I am co-founder of Turning Tides Collective. We work with clients to design more equitable organizations. And my fun fact that might not be known from LinkedIn, I take building railroads with my children very seriously. I am very committed to getting a perfect plan, executing it well, and when a 2-year-old gets in the way, I get really cranky about it. So that's probably my fun fact, and also something I do for fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Who's next?
I can go. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashmi Patel. I'm a life coach for millennial folks of color. And I like to help people who are stuck in survival mode, burnout, and overwhelm, and help them move towards a life with more ease, space, and choice. Essentially, sometimes when you wake up and you look at your life and you're like, I didn't sign up for this, or I didn't choose this. I just followed all the rules and now I have this life. It can be really scary when you decide you don't want that life. And so I really like to help people design the life they want and find a slower journey that fits their process.
Mm.
And this may not be relevant, but a fun fact about me is I played the oboe for 7 years. Can I play it now? No, but I have.
That is so relevant. Yeah, thanks. I'm Gabby. I'm a financial coach, especially for women of color who are new to personal finance. And I felt really called to serve like BIPOC women because we have a saying that finance is hella male, pale, and stale. So I'm trying to bring more of us into finance because like we all deserve wealth too. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Oh, and my fun fact. So yesterday I shared that I do hula dancing. It's like my wellness and like mindfulness practice, and it's just really fun too. So I've been doing that since I was 8 years old. So almost my whole life.
Oh wow! I don't think I realized you were doing this since you were 8 years old. Gabby and I just had a conversation yesterday, so I'm like, this is news to me. But all right, y'all. So thank you for sharing a little bit about yourselves. I would also love to hear more about you being immigrants or children of immigrants. Where are you coming from? Right. Where are the identities that you hold close to your heart? Like I often lead my conversations and introductions with I'm Filipino American, like second gen daughter of immigrants, because I'm proud of that and I want people to know that that is the motherland, right? And also representation. A lot of times when I am on a stage, on a podcast or whatnot, so much feedback is, "Oh my gosh, like I'm Filipino too," or like there's someone who looks like me here, right? Like, and it's one big thing that I maybe underestimated, and why I lead with that in my introductions these days is because of representation, because I rarely see myself on stage and people rarely see me, like, right? Or someone who looks like them. And so much of the feedback I've gotten, even on particularly being on, say, LinkedIn and becoming more visible on social media was, I believe I can do something now because like I saw someone do it. I saw someone who looks like me do it. Someone who with my like similar background, lived experience, heritage, cultural identity, etc. So if y'all don't mind sharing a little bit, maybe more about what is your what are some of the identities that you really hold close to your heart, especially as an identity of being an immigrant?
I can go first for this one. So my parents immigrated here in the 80s from India. And I think for me, like the reason I hold that so dearly to my heart is one, like I've been able to go back to India as a child a lot and it has a special place in my heart. But just, like listening to the stories of what your parents went through as soon as they got here and like, they settled in Chicago. They had probably never seen snow in their life. And all of a sudden they're just in like feet of snow. And, my dad tells me this story where he would get off the bus a couple blocks early just to save 15 cents. And I think, like for me, that's such a crazy, I wouldn't even pick up 15 cents if I like dropped it or something right now, which like shows the level of privilege that I have compared to my parents. I think the comparison of what my life has always looked like to how they started when they came here is what really makes it have like such a deep, meaningful place in my heart. So yeah, and there's like obviously tons of stories like that, but yeah.
Thanks, Ashmi. Who's next?
I'm happy to go next. So I love that you're asking us to talk about our immigration stories because in our conversations, Carissa, you know that my being an immigrant is such a critical part and probably the part of my identity I lead with. So I'm a Guyanese immigrant and I moved here when I was 8 years old. And I have to say that event of having immigrated to the United States is probably the single most impactful thread of my life. And I like never stop being an immigrant. And no amount of attempt at assimilation has been very helpful for me. But I love the story that Ashmi shared about just the saving of 15 cents and actually now dropping 15 cents and not even bending down to pick it up. Because I recall when we moved here, I would walk the streets with my mom and she would pick up every penny, dime, nickel, anything she saw on the sidewalk, she'd bend over and pick it up. And I had such extreme shame in it. I would like literally be on the brink of tears sometimes, just being like, Mom, why are you doing this? Stop. You know, and she's just like, we are poor and penny by penny is how we make it. Like every penny that we pick up from the sidewalk, like that somebody lost and they don't care about, is important in our lives. And I think that recognition of like the place of money in our lives and whatnot has been such a like the experience, I think, more importantly, of like being poor and immigrant and probably also a single parent household have all been such crucial parts of how I design my own life and how I think about what kind of futures that I want for myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, as a financial coach, obviously, I'm like, yes, money touches everything. And so it's like so tied up in all of our other identities. And, I think that's such it feels like money can feel so shameful, but then maybe as you dive more into money, you realize like, oh, I think everyone feels shame around money. So it's like a totally normal, like, valid feeling. And like similar to what you're saying, like my mom growing up always would tell me how she had to take like 2 or 3 buses to get to school in the morning because her family couldn't afford to like drive her to school in the morning. I get so many like stories about like how much struggle and sacrifice there was to give me a better life. And I think that like that has been obviously very like meaningful because it gives me such a clear like motivation to do well in life. But it's also been like very it's like a different like hustle grind mentality than like the bro mentality, like the bro like wake up and grind mentality. It's like like everyone sacrificed a lot for you to do well, so you better do well. And so yeah, so like like my on my mom's side of the family, the whole like all 20 of my like my grandma, her sisters, her cousins, like everyone immigrated together from Mexico, and they spent their entire careers basically working in the field, like kneeling, picking like strawberries. And so when I get to sit in like my like my fancy gaming chair and like work in an air conditioned office, and I think about like the sacrifice that they had to make to get me to this spot, it's like, oh, I guess I can put up with like a 9 to 5. Like I don't need to like complain about that. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of like, I'm both, it's like a double, what is it? It's 2 sides of the same coin. Like I'm very protective of the legacy that my family has given me, but also like it kind of is a lot to carry sometimes.
Yeah, Krista, I might be cutting off one of your questions, but I'm piggybacking off of what Gabby has to say the idea of like a double-edged sword or like 2 sides to the same coin. It's like this idea that I'm grateful for everything that I have because I know how hard my parents worked for it. But then at the same time, like if I have, like it's been a journey to work through the guilt of having any sort of critical thought about the experience or about being an American, or realizing that maybe not everything is, fluffy and floral. And so I think that that's like such a unique experience, either as an immigrant or a child of immigrants, when you realize that you're allowed to feel something besides gratitude. And I think it can be tough, especially when you're still trying, as Gabby said, trying to live up to the legacy that your family sacrificed so much to make. And, like making your own choices and doing things outside of what may be expected of you, or the burden of like an entire family hoping that you're successful in a certain way, can be really hard. And yeah, I feel like that's something I talk about with people all the time. And sometimes it's hard to believe for yourself that you deserve happiness in the way that you want it, and that isn't going against all the sacrifice that your family made for you.
Yeah.
I would love to jump off of that too, because it just
Totally.
I was like, this is such a ripe conversation, because I think we talk about our immigration stories, from the moment of arrival for me oftentimes, but really my immigration story begins with my mom being a little girl in a small village in Guyana and looking above her and seeing an airplane go overhead and just thinking to herself, one day I'm going to be on the airplane and I'm going to move to the United States and I will become American. It's like seeding the dream. And so, she always tells me about how becoming an American has been a dream come true for her. It's like, and so I have wrestled with that particular story a lot in my life, thinking about like, what does it mean for my mom's dream come true to not necessarily be fulfilling all of my dreams? And so much of what Ashmi's talking about around like, it's important for us to recognize that we can feel something other than gratitude, or more complex than gratitude, right? Because there's a lot of gratitude that I have for everything my mom had to do to be here and to create the life that I have, to create even the opportunity for me to be critical of the move that we've made. And I'm also in the business of like making my own dreams come true, right? So my business is, starting organizations, but a big part of that is like building the world I want and the dreams that I have. And so I'm just extending that moment of my mom's life when she seeded the thought that she was going to do this thing and made it happen. And I'm like extending that by saying, well, I have different dreams and I'm going to make those dreams happen.
Oh, that's so good.
Y'all are making me cry. Like, but I'm an emotional person. Maybe something I did not pick up from my Stoke-Asian parents. I am happy to cry live on a live stream as the leader of this. But yes, please, let's use this as a free for all to chat more about the stories. I will interject with questions that I have, but this is what I want. I don't think a lot of work, business, entrepreneurship conversations give space to this, right? Like this, I'm hearing themes of sacrifice, dreams, us pursuing our own dreams that might be divergent from those of the parents who sacrificed their lives to get over here, right? Even think about what their dreams were, emotions that we're allowed to have because maybe our parents didn't have that, or they weren't as expressive for various reasons, right? So I'm all for the conversations. Keep it going. Ashmi, were you going to say something? And here I am as I continue with all the stories about our parents and our like the wishes that we and the dreams that we all have. So and I just love seeing all the BIPOC women or the women of color, the immigrants in here doing the thing. So let's continue. I wanted to say just to declare that.
Mine was not an important point. I was literally just going to tell Lisa that the concept that it's an extension of her mother's dreams is so beautiful, and I'm going to borrow that if you're okay with it. I just think that it's such a great way to think about it, that it's just our different way of honoring the dreams that they had, and the dreams that they had was in the context and the language that they had at the time, and we're just expanding that because their sacrifice allotted us to expand it.
I want to share, talk a little bit more about sacrifice and maybe how that has impacted our decision to even start our businesses and our going back and forth. I know a lot of us are like, oh my gosh, like how dare I, or how audacious, who am I to be starting this business and doing something, living in this nice air conditioned house with my gaming chair or whatever, right? And choosing, God forbid, choosing a path that wasn't out of necessarily maybe need or escaping something or pursuing something, that wasn't so great. I was sharing, I think, with Gabby yesterday that I'm one generation away from being a farmer. Like my parents both worked on farms, or were like that. My grandparents were farmers, like in the Philippines, right? So to know that like I have a 6-figure salary, I have a nice car and apartment, and all the shoes because I used to work at Zillow, all these things, and then I'm gonna decide to quit my job, my safety and my security, and go pursue this like very risky thing called entrepreneurship, right? And I'll tell you, there's a journey of like, who am I? Like, can I do that? Is that okay? Are people? Are my parents going to kill me? I'm allowed to tell them. I know someone's got a story around that. And what if I'm not successful? Should I even do it? Is this too risky? Oh my gosh, right? So all of those kind of thoughts, as immigrants, children of immigrants, I think are big points that I think a lot of us deal with in this decision making process of pursuing our own businesses. Anyone want to start?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I have a story for around this. So let me jump in here. I also have been tearing up. I should have brought tissues, but I didn't need it this early in the morning. So I mentioned that my mom's side of the family is Mexican. My dad's side of the family is Filipino, and I distinctly remember when I got my first real job, my grandpa asked me how how my life was going, and I told him I had my first job, and he said, "Oh, you're not a nurse?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize I could only have a medical career." And I was like, "Grandpa, clearly you don't understand. Like, I cannot even help put a Band-Aid on people sometimes if they're bleeding. I cannot be a nurse." But it's like such a Filipino stereotype, right? Like I feel like there's so many other people in my family that became a nurse or became a doctor, or they work in the medical field in some way. That even not even entrepreneurship, but just even having a job outside of the healthcare field was like a lot for me to overcome in my family. And so then once I have worked through a series of jobs that I've had, I felt like entrepreneurship was even more taboo almost in my family to even tell them okay, I'm quitting my full-time job that's very successful and people at work love me and I'm making six figures to pursue this dream I have. And I think it's exactly what we were talking about earlier is to my family, the dream looks different, but it's because of them that I can expand what that dream looks like, especially having the intuition and the space to listen to myself and to think about what I really want and what's really meaningful to me, instead of having to stay in a job just for survival. So yeah. And I know, Carissa, you probably want me to mention I made all these narratives in my head that my parents are going to kill me. I thought they were gonna freak out, and I told them that I quit my full-time job to pursue coaching, and they were like, "Oh, that's great." And I was like, "That's all you have to say." I had prepared a list of kind of rebuttals and reasons why they shouldn't freak out, and they were just like, "That's great. We'll see you at dinner," or that's it. So,
yeah. Thanks for sharing, Gabby.
You're like, I'm still bringing my PowerPoint presentation for why this was a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have all the receipts on why this is going to be profitable, and yeah.
I still resonate with that. I don't think I told my parents until I made six figures because I was like, they're gonna kill me. So, and now when I started getting, on stages and getting paid 5 figures alone for a 1 hour conversation, they were like, what? What do you? They still kind of what do you do? Right? Because I'm also not in the medical field or nurse, whatever. Also one of the few that went into business, right? Yeah, I think that is so resonant in that I waited until I actually was making good money from my business. Thank God it didn't take too long, right? But yeah, that what I'm saying, I'm talking about roadblocks. Sometimes the people that you're fearing the most when you're tell people that you have a business is your own family, right? And the fear of the judgment or the questions, really, it's the never ending questions that don't ask me. don't just let's just avoid this conversation altogether, right? Lisa or Ashmi, I'd love to hear again too for you. How has maybe being an a child of immigrants, impacted your decision to to become an entrepreneur?
Um, I think I have like a different perspective, and also my very like friendly relationship with my mom makes my tone of conversation with her around things just different. So to me, I was like, the ultimate entrepreneurial experiment is moving from the place where you have your roots and your community to a whole new country. So if you're going to give me a hard time about it, I can give you a hard time about the risks you've taken. So thankfully, my mom did not give me a hard time about it. I was ready to give this thing a shot. And, my mom was very supportive, but I was also very clear when we were having conversations about that like the, the point, and I think that dream she had when she was a child wasn't ultimately about just landing in a place. It wasn't about geography, right? It was about opportunity and freedom. And so I think we always are analyzing freedom, analyzing the extent to which we have freedom, and creating and like continuing to create freedom. And in her own story, the move and the career opportunities she's had, so she is in healthcare, she is a nurse, has like given her the freedom that she needed to feel really settled and affirmed in the risk, what I call the entrepreneurial risk that she has taken. Because I'm like, all of our parents are entrepreneurs, y'all. Immigrants are the ultimate entrepreneurs. It is the biggest risk you can take, right? And they like do it the moment they go get that visa and board the plane. They're like, that's it. And so now that we've like completed that, I'm like, okay, so the next stage of this that we're creating freedom together, right? Like, you've given me this place and the education, and now what does freedom look like for me? And so to her, she was like, that is clear. Like, my dream was always that my kids would have more than I had, and it sounds like you have more than I have. So she just kind of let me go and do this thing. And she's letting me go every day. Every day she's checking in about how things are going, and she's always willing to like support. Every time I have doubts, she's like, don't worry, it'll work out, and if you ever need help, just come back. I'll help you, but like it'll work out, because she's also like deeply invested in this journey as part of the extension of the immigration experiment.
That's so lovely. And yeah, and I guess I don't know how we did it, but we picked the order of how we presented this perfectly, because I fall like right in the middle of both spectrums. Yeah, like I think for me, similar to Lisa, like with my parents, like it's a very close relationship. So like I think it wasn't a matter of telling them, it was a matter of just like bringing them along to be like, this is what I'm thinking of doing, like it's a whole thing. But it's right, it's the explanation of like, what is a coach? Like, is there safety in that market? Because I think for my parents, it was having the conversation and almost like helping them realize that the reason that they wanted me to be a dentist or whatever was because that was their version of security. But, like they didn't have the language to say, we want you to be secure. So instead they would say, we want you to be a dentist. And I think, so then I was like, okay, cool. It's like my job to maybe dig. I guess the coach in me started early and was like, let's dig a little bit and figure out like what you really want from me. And, they were just like, we want you to be secure, and we want to know that like you'll always have a job, because my dad had a great job, lost it when the market crashed, like when all of that happened. And then he became an entrepreneur. So it was more out of like necessity than choice. And so I think the idea that I would make a choice, especially like we're all so young, right? And it's like, oh, like you're just at the beginning of your career and you're just going to start something out of nothing and no one knows anything about it and you're just going to go for it. And it's like, yeah, I am just going to go for it. And so I think that was the experience of just bringing them along and being open-minded to all of the questions. Because I agree, sometimes I'm like, why so many questions? And then I have to like take a step back and be like, right, I'm lucky that they're trying to understand instead of just being like so shut down to an idea that they don't know. And so I think the experiences, it helps you broaden your perspectives even more, especially when you think you're like an open-minded person and you realize that like everybody has their blind spots and their biases, especially I think for their family sometimes. And so that part of the experience has been great. And Chris, I'm going back to something you said about sacrifice a while ago. I have like such a complicated relationship to that word because I think, especially as like immigrants or children of immigrants, the type of sacrifice we've normalized is very different than the type of sacrifice we as entrepreneurs who have some level of privilege are taking. So I didn't credit any of the sacrifices that I've made to start this business. And I have definitely, like, it was a choice. It was a choice for me to prioritize joy, but I had to make a lot of sacrifices to make this choice. But because they weren't normalized sacrifices, or they weren't sacrifices that made my life necessarily harder or grittier, I didn't count them immediately. And I was just like, oh, wow, like I'm so lucky. And I must be so selfish because I'm choosing a life that is supposed to bring me joy. And so I'm trying to reframe my relationship to sacrifice, and that everybody makes their different version of it and it's a choice, but there's no like right or wrong sacrifice, and there's no one sacrifice that counts more than the other. So yeah.
There's I'm looking at the time, and we're going to extend this to another half an hour because like there's just so much to talk about. I was going to say, I feel like this can be like a mini hour conversation. We might move this to LinkedIn audio at some point. But one of the things I'd love to learn more about from all of you in perspective is the idea of success. So, right, starting the business is one thing. Worrying about the 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 fears and the shame and the guilt we might carry for the sacrifice that maybe we don't feel is as equivalent as moving across the world to come and have a better life, right? So now we're starting, and some of the other kind of, I think, common themes that come up are around the idea of like what does it actually mean to be successful. So we had these titles, just generally in the West, right? In North America, it's about our success is tied to what our title is, how much money we make, right? And that again plays into our how we decide to become entrepreneurs, or what the goal is as an entrepreneur. A lot of, I think, what we've seen too is sacrifice of working hard, and that mentality actually hustling because and grinding because that is real. I saw both of my parents growing up work two jobs, right? So that I could want for nothing as, an American, so love to hear a little bit more about that, whether like definition of success and how you may have had to let something go or create a new one in this new journey you're on. And also around money mindset, the idea of like, okay, what do I need to make now, like for this to be seen as good, like by me, but by others, like my parents, like etc. And yeah, money mindset's a big one, I think. So who wants to go there?
I can take this one first. I think one of the biggest things I've learned after starting the business is that my relationship to money is very complicated. And I think it's easy to not realize it because it's just what your relationship to money is, right? It's just how it has always been. But then the relationship of money and success and how those play together is very complicated. And I think for me, just redefining success as like joy, ease, happiness, rather than getting a title or saying that I got a promotion or all of the, I think, cookie cutter versions of success that we're fed growing up. I'm not even going to say was hard. I'm going to say is hard, because I think it's like an ongoing journey of being okay with my version of success and like being able to say it out loud and be okay with what someone's going to think of me if, I say that. And I think it's like, Carissa, when you were asking that question, the thing that popped into my head was, we're talking a lot about our immigrant families, but I think what we also haven't touched on is the term family comes with a much broader community, right? It comes with the immigrant community that your parents found themselves in, the group of aunties and uncles that have been around your whole life, that have raised you and make you who you are, but then at the same time have their thoughts and opinions that they're happy to share with you and your family. And I think with that comes pressure. And I think with that comes pressure of saying, like, I want to be successful because I am representing my family in this community. And figuring out a way to separate yourself from that while still being able to enjoy all the good things that come from that community, I think has been a journey with clients I have, people I talk to, of just figuring out that you can still belong to this community and not necessarily adhere to all of the things that they think are for you.
Thank you for sharing that. When we say family, it is not the nuclear family that maybe the American model is. It is all the aunts, aunties, and uncles, and all, to your point, their opinions on how you should be living your life. Anyone in the audience can identify, dropping that in the chat. But thank you for bringing it up. That's why, and that pressure that we have, because it's we can't hide, right? We're gonna go to the family party, see all the cousins that we're gonna get compared to, and so get ready to talk about what you do, right? Lisa or Gabby, any shares around money mindset, redefining success as a child of immigrants, entrepreneur?
I'm going to begin, but it's not going to be eloquent because I honestly don't have a clear and eloquent analysis of my relationship to money. Like, I think Ashmi captured it. It's complicated, and you don't really know how complicated it is until somebody asks you to talk about it. And I'm like, the English language does not have words. But one of the things that comes up for me is that one on this idea of like what family is, right? My family is extremely close. My like immediate family is my mom, my brother, and me here, right? But we are so connected to all of my mom's siblings, all of my cousins, and part of our immigration story is that we are just this like poor family from a poor village in a relatively poor country, right? And moving has not necessarily resolved poverty, and so there's lots of people in my family that still live in deep poverty, and one of the things that my mom is always feels responsible for as the first of her siblings to have immigrated is that in some way she's responsible for their security. So she always has this dream and this pressure. It's like, the better we get, the better they all get. And when we get better, we have a responsibility to all of them. We will take care of all of them. And so one of the things that she talks a lot about is like, I wish I could just win the lottery. And if I could just have like $3 million, all my siblings would be housed, all my nieces and nephews would be well taken care of. And, this immigration story would have had the happy ending it needs to have, and we'd all be, well. But that like within that is just a desire that immigration would have solved the problem of poverty for us, and it hasn't. And so I think my relationship to money is really rooted in that idea that if somehow I had enough money or I could make enough money, I would be able to take care of everyone. And a lot of the pressure I have around money is the need to earn it for the purpose of taking care of everyone. I still carry that with me every day. I think about it a lot. I'm like, I've left my 6-figure paying full-time job and I'm doing this entrepreneurship thing, but like, I'm not actually reaching the levels of financial gain that I need to make sure everybody's securely housed and well taken care of and have no concerns for their well-being. And that is so far beyond my immediate family and my partner and my children, right? I'm like really thinking my extended family. And it like connects to my definition of success, because at the end of the day, within that is what success is. Success is ultimately that we are able to provide for the whole family, and so money and success in that way are connected. And at the end, and I don't think that it had for me any direction on what I should do or what I should become, as long as I could like solve the problem of being poor for everyone else. And I struggle with it a lot, because I'm like, I'm not poor, and like I can choose to be like the entrepreneurship journey, because like I haven't I'm one of the members of my family that hasn't remained poor. And in doing so, I really risk the security that would allow me to provide for more people. And I'm wrestling with that as part of this journey every day, as I've made the decision to leave full-time employment and do this like beautiful thing called entrepreneurship. I'm also sacrificing for now the potential to provide for more people who I feel a great responsibility for.
Yeah, so many points there, Lisa, of one that, a lot of us, I think, immigrants, children, immigrants think about is taking care of multiple generations, right? Not just our own like direct like line, right? It's the maybe the aunt over there and like the siblings, the cousin, whatever, right? So that's a point, I think, again, when we're talking about money mindset as an entrepreneur. So I'm like, okay, like there's sacrifice, there's guilt and shame, there's obligation, there's just a much bigger community that we immediately think of, rather than maybe again the nuclear family, right? And so it's beautiful that I feel like, again, almost everyone I work with, everyone I work with is mission driven, has a bigger dream, a bigger purpose than making money for themselves. It really is, let me figure this out so I can take care of my family and community, the very extended one, right? Like the many people that umbrella covers. One thing I also just want to share too is like this constant kind of reframe that we have to have as we unpack our money mindset, where that all comes from, our money stories, right? Seeing again all about the hard work and sacrifice that's come along, the being poor, right? Coming from farming towns, like villages, right? We've seen this, So, and the constant reframe potential we have to have of, okay, this opportunity of entrepreneurship isn't one that's it's risky, but it's also one that has much greater opportunity if we can figure it out, and we work with people who can help us figure it out, to make more than I'll ever will with my $100,000+ salary that maybe they'll give me a bump for next year, or if they don't lay me off, right? So I debunk, I feel like, this like idea that these jobs are any safer than the route that we are taking, right? I think it's perceived safety. I think in the pandemic particularly, we saw how expendable we actually are, right? And so as employees, and so not to knock working for other folks, I think it's constant positioning of, yes, this is risky, but also not diversifying maybe your income streams, not trying and at least having a side hustle or more control of your finances, your wealth, and your ability to make more. Like, that's also risky to not try, right? To not do that, because the potential is there, and we won't have that potential when we think like the only way to get money, right? To take care of our families is by working for the man, working for somebody else. And that's, again, the colonial imperial like all of the capitalism, all of that tied into why we potentially believe all of that, right? So just wanted to kind of share some of that. Gabby, do you have a thought on this? And I mean, we could be talking about this for a while. I might have to segment this into one question next time, because we could probably run it all an hour on one of these questions. But you as a financial coach, I am sure, has a lot of thoughts around success, wealth building, and like money mindset shifting, as an immigrant or child immigrant.
Yeah, I actually, you reminded me of something that I've been really like working on lately for my own money mindset, which is to think about success not just as like financial success, and to think about wealth not just as financial wealth, but also like the wealth inherent in our families and our communities that supports us now and like will continue to. Like I have talked about this not with any of you, but I did like the trauma of money course that Carissa knows about. And I talked about it in that course with other people where for some reason, I don't know where this came from, but I recognized that I had this like deep-seated fear of becoming homeless one day, um, and like having to like live out of my car. And when I finally said it out loud, I realized one, that I had been carrying that like mindset and fear with me like my whole life, and two, I was like, my parents would never let that happen. Like my aunt and uncle, my like my dad's best friend, who is also my uncle, like everyone is not going to let me sleep in my car. Like they're gonna be like, come sleep on the couch or come sleep in our extra bed. Like there's so much, I feel like, like maybe not, it's not hidden wealth, but it's like, it's a different type of wealth that you don't think of as like financial wealth or like financial success, but it's like we are here together. We're in a community. We have such strong relationships that like we will not let each other fail, even if we really are failing. Like, yeah, we might lose our job or something, but like we're gonna let everyone else stay with us, feed them. Like um it's just like acknowledging all of this wealth that is not traditionally recognized as wealth that exists like inherently in our networks. Um, so that's been like something I've been trying to work on more, is like, yes, I'm obsessed with personal finance. You should see my bookshelf over here. It's like all personal finance books. There's a very traditional way of thinking about money, but there's like so much that hasn't been acknowledged in those books or like in the traditional field of finance that we all have just by like being in community together. And I really think being in community together is like one of our biggest forms of like liberation and freedom, because the less that we are relying on our jobs, the more that we can like rely on ourselves and each other, like the less that they can like tell us what to do, like like it's just a natural consequence of that. So yeah, there's we could talk about this for years, for the rest of our lives. A money mindset is not like a destination, it's an ongoing journey. So yes, there's too much to say.
Yeah, thanks, Gabby, for highlighting the wealth that we have. So much that we maybe forget about it, like that there's, because all the friends and the friends and the friends, right? Like not blood family that we have. Like, yeah, maybe we can take more risks actually than we think, because yeah, like someone's gonna there are many aunties that are like whose beds I can sleep in if this doesn't work out, right? And I maybe potentially forget about that abundance we have. Um, I know we're about to wrap up here, and just have been grateful for all of you just speaking about community to join in on having this conversation. I had some preset questions, and I was just like trying to flow with it because I'm like, wow, I didn't think about that. Like, like that. That's why I think it's so interesting to be in community with people who share your values, similar maybe identities, potential backgrounds, and such. So we can discuss these things, and we're not alone in feeling the way we feel about, in this case, being an immigrant or children of immigrants, right? And how that has been impacting us. So just thank you all for joining. One thing I'd like to do before we wrap up is just, what so much again of this, the point of this is representation. These are not conversations that I typically have had in any of my groups when I've joined an entrepreneurship, experience, group program or whatnot, right? And so I really appreciate that the laughing and the tears that have shown up here, and the safety that we have with each other to to do that, and even publicly live, right? So with that, being representatives of your communities, your families, what is a tip that you can leave for folks, as they are either starting or continuing on to become the first in their and only in their family to be a business owner, say?
I can go first. my tip is more of like a mindset shift that has really helped me, or like something that I remind myself of a lot. And it's this idea that like when I decide, or like when I even started to think about wanting to start my own business, I think I felt like I was shirking my responsibility by choosing joy. And I'm reminding myself of the reframe that each generation has a different responsibility. So the generation that immigrated here, their, you know, like their responsibility was doing, like, having the immigration process and then figuring out how to settle into this country. And as the second generation comes up, so that's like for me, my parents immigrated. So for me, my responsibility is helping break that generational trauma. So I'm not shirking my responsibility by choosing joy. I'm just making that possible for the generation that comes after me. And I have to remind myself of that all the time, because there's lots of times where I feel selfish, or that, you know, like, how could I possibly be choosing something that brings me this much joy and feels easy? At times, sometimes it feels really hard. And so I'm just like, oh, I'm just doing this for myself and my family, but as well to make it easier for the next generation, so that they'll have whatever new responsibility is meant for them. Yeah, so that's my tip, mindset reminder.
Thanks for sharing. And since you kind of were getting into my last question of like, what is the legacy? What are you that you're leaving behind, or like you're moving to the next generation? Or another way to think about it is, what are you doing to both make your ancestors and your future ancestors proud? So as we wrap this up, like, what's a tip, and how do we think about our honoring our ancestors? Lisa,
I
again, or
think,
do you want to finish that off, Ashley?
yeah, I was just going to finish it off with, yeah, I think in order to honor my ancestors, I'm just trying to live my life in the most like joyful and responsible way possible, to continue giving back to my community, but also enjoying, like Gabby said, the wealth of community that we have, and making sure that that community stays alive for generations to come. So yeah, so I'll kick it off to Lisa or Gabby.
I can go. I'll keep it short on tip. I think my tip is take inventory. Might be a little too pragmatic for some, but for me, I know the fear of starting my own business and doing it on my own was really rooted in this fear that I was just going to become homeless, as Gabby was sharing earlier, right? I had this deep fear also. I'm going to dishonor the sacrifice of immigration by sacrificing everything that we have gained as a result of all of the work and sacrifice my mom put in. And then I'm going to throw it all away, squander it all within a matter of months, and we'll all be homeless. And also not true, because tons of aunties would pick me up and give me a place. But I still had that fear. And so for me, the answer was taking inventory. And I use take inventory really intentionally, because it's not just about like doing the math of how much resources do I have and how many months can I last in the entrepreneurial journey. Because I did do that math of like adding up savings in all the places, and like, deciding what I'm willing to spend. I'm willing to spend these kids' college money, because I'm not sure I even want to send them to college given how college tuition prices are going. But, like doing the math and also adding all the people up who would be supportive for me, like really take stock of what you have. Because once I did that, I was like, oh my goodness, I am so prepared for this. Like I like will not end up homeless in a car, because I have this wide net. I've got relationships. I've got like the resources to take me a couple of months. Like I am so much more prepared than I thought I was if I was just like sitting in this spot trying to imagine what it would look like. So the vision is important, but take a pragmatic step and take inventory. And in terms of honoring ancestors, I'm B2B. So I am working, and I call my work, like I work in organizational design. I'm helping organizations to design the organizations that are going to lead us into a more equitable future, right? And in doing that, I think I'm honoring my ancestors by actually just creating a world that has space for all of us, and allows for all of us to belong. Because ultimately, the most important thing I think so many immigrants are seeking is a place of belonging. And so in working with organizations, I'm trying to enable organizations to actually provide services that are helpful and supportive for immigrants, but also create the space where we actually do get the answers to that question about belonging. Because I've been on the outside for a long time, and I'm ready to be part of a society where feeling on the outside is not such a profound feeling, and I don't have to lead with the identity of being an immigrant. So that's where I land on sort of honoring the ancestors.
This restream doesn't have emojis that I can use to heart everything. So.
I was just doing that. I was like, should I like?
I was searching for a button to click with emojis like the whole time. So yeah, I mean, the financial coach in me loves that you took inventory. I really, I really love that because I think like once you are very clear on like what you have and also what you're saying no to or what you're saying goodbye to, it makes making the decision so much easier. Like I love that. But actually my tip is, I feel like people just don't expect this from finance, but my tip is to like do the inner work that you need to do. And it's not like a one and done, but like if that means going to therapy, go to therapy. If it means like doing like reading books about your inner trauma and working through it, like do what you need to do to like do that inner work, because I think so much of, well, one, we've talked like there's so much money, shame, and trauma tied up in all of our past experiences, and like it affects your decisions going forward. So the sooner you can start working on it, then the faster like you will progress in other areas of your life. So for me, that's like my number one tip or like lesson that I want to leave with people. And I love this question of legacy because I think about this every day. I have my grandparents' pictures up on the wall next to me. I know you can't see it, but like just in everything I do, I just want to like honor them in some way, like be the best person that I can be. So if that means like doing well financially, like that, I think that is definitely, when I was younger, I was like, I'm going to be financially successful to honor the sacrifices and legacy of my family. But now, as we've talked about, it's been so exciting to hear like other people have this progression too of like, I am redefining like what success means for myself and for my family. Like it doesn't have to just be financial. It doesn't have to be like buying a big house and a fancy car. It's like, one, doing inner work, like going to therapy and like healing the like generational trauma within myself that I'm carrying from the past. But like also I'm healing it for the future too. Like I don't have to like pass on all of this trauma to the next person that I, hopefully bring into the world. So yeah, that's how I think about the legacy.
Oh, thank you all so much for such a nice start to my day. Being surrounded by friends that I adore is and having a rich conversation is just it's very energizing. As I move into the rest of this very busy day. One more thing as we close out, as entrepreneurs, I'd love for you all to share, what's exciting for you, what are you working on, and how can people reach you?
We're all looking at each other. I guess somebody has to break the silence. What's exciting for me is that my business, we're wrapping our 2023 contracts. And so I'm really excited about building some new relationships for 2024. And so you can reach us at turningtidescollective.com. That's where we work. And I'm looking forward to like meeting new people and establishing some new clients.
Gabby. I'm just gonna point now.
I wanted to like have the confetti emoji and like the ta-da, like the celebration emojis. Yes, please, Abby. I mean, we're on LinkedIn. Like, connect with all of us on LinkedIn. As I've talked about, I'm a financial coach, so I'm taking on 2 more clients this month for one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in working with me, just send me a message, or you can just put a comment in here, we'll connect. And then something I'm very excited about is I will be publishing my first YouTube video this week. So you can find me on YouTube as well. Just go find my LinkedIn, you'll find all the links. So thank you. Yeah, super exciting.
That is super exciting. I want confetti for everybody. Yeah, so I'm a life coach. I also have open spots for clients right now. I offer 3 to 6 month packages. You can find me on LinkedIn, which has like all my links. I have a little interview podcast series that I'll be reposting on my page, which I'm really excited about. And if you want information about the business, ashmipatel.com. I call the business my little piece of the revolution because I do think that helping millennial folks of color and bringing them together means that we're going to heal ourselves and heal the world. And so if you want to come do that with me, I would love to get to know you and help you, figure out how to live a life that you want and help other people do that as well. So, yeah.
Well, thank you again all so much for joining me today on this Built by BIPOC Q&A Tuesday. This is more fun. I feel like I need to do more of these. I just love the depth of conversation that we can have, and that I don't feel I have a lot of in other like kind of like business coaching type of containers. So if that, for everyone watching the audience, if that is interesting to you, to be able to have these deeper conversations about what it's like to be an immigrant, a child of immigrants, person of color, navigating the world, navigating business as a solo or as an entrepreneur, I'd love to meet with you, right? Doing this in community is really what this is all about. I think I've even underestimated how much community to do all the things with, to do hard things with, like being on LinkedIn Live for the first time or doing a live stream for the first time, right? It's so much easier when you can work together and do it, right? So if anyone is interested in anything, in exploring more what that looks like, the waitlist is actually open for my signature group program, Leap to Liberation, which is a 6-month group coaching program for BIPOC entrepreneurs, really to teach them how to level up their pricing and their product suite, market their services using specifically the power of LinkedIn, as well as sell their services in a way that I feel is just human-centric, heart-centered, and actually pretty fun. And like, it will have you laughing on these sales calls. This is how I teach sales. So if that is interesting to you and you want to be surrounded by a community of folks who just get it, please just visit consciousexchange.com/sleep to liberation, or you can just message me also on LinkedIn, DM me on LinkedIn, and we'll chat. Otherwise, again, thank you all so much for joining Built by BIPOC on this Q&A Tuesday. If you enjoyed anything that was said today from this conversation from any of my guests, again, thank you. Please connect with them. Thank you again, Gabby, Ashmi, Lisa, for deciding to do this with me and try this new thing with me. It was such a joy to spend my morning with you, and I'll see you all next time, right? Let's go build our liberatory futures together.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.